think recording, let everyone know, did the recording already start? Recording has started. Yes, thank you. There was a question on the chat whether these sessions are available for watching afterwards, and yes, they are. So I don't promote them in very heavily, but there is a vesa.ws. Sorry, yeah, I think publicly this certificate should be okay. It's only the internal certificate within my network, which is incorrect. But anyway, there vesa.ws/vlog. There you should see all the recordings from the beginning of time. So if you wish to refer these ones later on, this is the place where you can find them. And I will double check if this certificate has expired, but should not be publicly. It's only my like internal network where the certificate has expired. Okay, this week there was a requirement or request earlier from someone who was visiting these sessions that could we have like on-premise stuff or something else than Fabric, because it has been Fabric only like half a year or something. And this week is one of those weeks, but there is still Fabric related things. Technically, this thing we are discussing, or I will show, doesn't require Fabric, and it would equally work, for example, with Databricks. So what is the use case or business case here is that I did a proof of concept for customer where our business requirement was to move data from on-premise SQL Server to cloud to be able to process that data with Databricks or with Fabric later on, and to do that as fast as possible and as easy and as scalable as possible. And if you think about that, first thing that could come to your mind is that, okay, let's create a data factory pipeline, for example, and use that. And yes, we did that. So customer had like existing solution where they, as of today, were using data factory. It's a bit old solution. So previously it has been using SSIS with storage account destination connector and kind of different things were used. Even backup restore from the on-premise database to the cloud databases were used at some time. But the requirement for how fast the data should be available for querying on the cloud side was not met. Kind of they were struggling. They were like always that why it takes so long for us to have that data available in the cloud. And what we did was actually we started using polybase. So SQL Server 2022 includes a new version of the polybase connector, which can connect to Azure Data Lake Gen 2. And here I have Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account with a container, and hoping to be able to browse it. Yes, and within the container, I have a lot of demo data already, and this has been configured in the SQL 2022 with the SAS token. So basically, went here, picked this one, picked the container properties. URL came from here, and then if I generate the SAS token, you can either generate it in this level, or how it's actually being done, even in this demo, that in the folder level. So then this SAS doesn't have any access to anywhere else. We have to use SAS token because SQL 2022 is not compatible with managed identities or something else. So that was something that we were actually struggling with the customer case that kind of, because they were against the SAS tokens because there's no auditability I think that's the English word for who has access to that, because this is not impersonated. But finally, we got permission mainly because we are only using folder that is not used for anything else, and we gave permissions read, add, create, write, list, and execute. So no permission changes, no ownership changes, or anything like that. 6 total, and then this SAS token is being injected to the SQL 2022 server. We create a separate database for this one, so it's not in the user data database, separate database. You need master key on the database. You need the polybase functionality. It works also in the standard version, so no enterprise edition is required. And then you need an external data source for that storage account. And remember to use the DFS endpoint there. And then you need a file format, which is Parquet in this case. Then we create the stored procedure. And this stored procedure is just to help to run those queries. It's not been exposed to any REST API or kind of some external interface where end user could invoke commands. So yes, I know it's using dynamic SQL, but it's not executing as something else. So it's executing as the user who is executing it. And it's not been exposed to anywhere outside, kind of any external tool where the identity would be different. So kind of I'm using this only to help you to create commands, which you have to have permissions to run anyway. So that's why I kind of say that it's okay to use the dynamic SQL. What does the command do is that it creates an external table. Kind of neat thing is that it uses within the external table name, it uses the session ID 64. So it's different on every connection. That's why these don't collide. Kind of we don't get similar named tables in every connection. We can run this parallel. Trust me, first we were struggling with this one, but this is an evolution. Then there's a parameter for folder name, which is put on the command where the location is, and then using those data source and file format. And then it executes the command with the SQL command injected here, so the select command. So it creates an external table within this folder as from this select statement. Then we drop the external table because we no longer need it. And this one also only deletes the metadata. So the files remain in the Azure Data Lake Gen 2. In real life, in that customer case, we used the private endpoint within the VNet connection by express route. But that's kind of in this demo, I'm not using it. It's the publicly facing interface, but it works. It works no matter which one you choose. I don't have an express route on myself, so that's why I'm using the public endpoint. Then to kind of show how fast the query is, here I have 10 million rows. And if I show you within, this is the server, SQL 41 is the SQL server I'm using. If I run this select statement, select star from this table where I have 10 million rows against this folder, which I don't yet have. So this _4 is something we don't yet. We have _3 here, but we don't have the _4. So let's run this one against the destination. You should see here, hopefully 200, 600 megabytes. So kind of it fully uses my 1 gigabit connection. I have a 1 gigabit connection to the internet which this kind of polybase connector with single thread almost uses. It was 600 something. That was the maximum on the screen here. On that customer case, we had 2 gigabit connection, and we used 4 streams in parallel, which fully occupied the whole capacity. Kind of whole line was full when used for parallel connections. But single connection can do easily 700 megabytes. So 10 million rows, 8 seconds. And then they are available in the year_4 here on the storage. It created 40 files. Why it was a bit slow? Because you can see that the file size is not optimal if you think about Spark. But you can actually control the number of files that this procedure creates by changing the max stop setting. So if max degree of parallelism is something else, it creates as many files. File size maximum is 1 gigabyte. So if you are max stop 1 and 2 gigabyte data, you will create 2 files. But kind of that's why I got smaller files, because my max stop was 40. I had 40 processors here, and I was using a kind of even lot bigger table in my demo earlier, so that's why it's 40. But now it's not optimal, I know. This is database level setting in new SQL Server. So what we did on the customer was that we created few databases like max stop 10, max stop 4, max stop 8, whatever, and then you can just, when you execute the start procedure in that database, you can easily control how many files it will create. So that was kind of neat. I personally like that. And then when it's on the data lake, you go to your Spark engine. And here, in my case, it's the Fabric, but it could be Databricks. Kind of, it doesn't matter. And here, what I have done is that I have created a shortcut on the Lakehouse object here on the external. I have created a new shortcut against the Data Lake Gen2 and picked up the URL of the Data Lake account and used the service principal as a connection method there. So kind of that's how I have set up the connection. You can use the organizational account and impersonate the connections, do kind of standard stuff you do with Fabric. But when you have created this, these files are now visible, or folders and files are visible here on the Fabric Lakehouse. So this _4, for example, is already here. And I have a notebook which is connected to the same Lakehouse in Fabric. And here, what I have done is that I have created an external table which is using the partitioning column, and it has a location of something underneath here, which is this folder. And then if I run, let's do a refresh, because we just in finish created some new data, 2017, yeah. Let's put 2016 here. So this is a partitioned Parquet table available here in our Lakehouse. And if I run this command 2016, now it started the Spark session. It should not output anything because we don't yet have it here. But now no data available. We could easily run from the what's the year? 2016. And of course, this is now demo data because I'm doing a select star from the same table running again for this one. This one kind of, this is for demo purposes. But in real life, in that proof of concept, we scripted these select statements. Like our ETL was to create these select statements to be correct, and then use the partitioned tables with correct partition to load them. So if I now run 2016 folder and execute this one, 60,000 rows, so it doesn't take any, like 1 second or something. It's there. And then I could just run the select statement from the Spark. Now it says no data available, even though it appeared here. Why? Because Fabric Spark as Databricks Spark will cache the metadata behind this structure. So if you run MSCK repair table, which has been documented as recover all the partitions in the directory and update the Hive metastore. So if I kind of reread the folder structure like this and run the same select command, it now includes the data. So we actually managed to create a stored procedure solution with some SQL agent jobs and things like that, which when we create the select statements as an incremental statements, we managed to load the data lake just using the SQL and the polybase, and it's very scalable. I want to say that also. And then just refreshing the metadata, they appear tables, standard Spark tables you can query within your lakehouse. So kind of for Fabric interfaces, the data is there. And of course, if you need, because it's an external table, this doesn't know that there are other workloads inputting the data into this table. It's also read-write mode. So if you for some reason, if you need to kind of modify the data also, or append the data also in the Spark endpoint, it's also possible. So you can just execute SQL and insert into the table. I really hope that it works. Come on. And when it's finalized like that, and if I refresh, I will now have the 2015 folder here. So kind of it's read-write mode, both from the SQL Server on-premise. Let's emphasize on-premise SQL Server 2022, and from the Fabric Lakehouse, same table there. You can insert and append data. Of course, I would imagine that the normal use case would be the load from on-premise SQL Server. But if you need to kind of do some cloud related stuff also here, it's doable. And as it's an unmanaged table in a way that it's external, you can create multiple of these tables pointing to the same structure or different partitioning ports, like subset. If you have a month underneath, just create an additional external table in 1 year, or do whatever you want, because these are just files at the end of the day. One thing to consider, the SQL 2022 doesn't support Delta. So it's Parquet. That's why kind of I needed to create that as a Parquet file. Of course, Delta file format technically is a Parquet. So in Spark, you can convert the table to Spark or to Delta. And then the JSON metadata file, it's been created. But then kind of SQL Server doesn't honor that. So when you add new data, those are not in the Delta transaction log, if you will. Kind of the JSON files are not being created there. So in in this proof of concept case, we were using Parquet. And then this is the first step for additional transformation. So this is something we use when reading from and doing the fancy stuff and inserting to the delta tables at the other side of the ETL. But kind of this was the fastest way of loading files, definitely the fastest way of loading data from on-premise SQL Server to ADLS Gen2. And as said, I'm using Fabric, could be Databricks also, so no difference there.